To be human is to engage in human activities. We have certain reflexive needs, internal needs that cannot be
Are
squashed.
you talking about sex, babe?
Well, not just sex, just everything that, we as humans do, and to be expected to be a Puritan, to be follow certain rules and regulations, all based on this Yahweh God that
Apparently doesn't like sex.
he apparently doesn't, or he just likes to torture his creation. He made us sexual to then turn around and not allow us to, venture in or even experiment or find out what it is that our likes or dislikes are. You end up gathering lots of PTSD and a lot of neurosis from it.
There's a lot of psychological abuse that goes on, especially in families that raise their children, homeschool families that raise their kids to be these pristine examples of like purity and like this divinity. Like they want them to have a halo over their heads.
Exactly. And I think that's going to solve problems. When the contrary, it creates a lot more problems. I mean, who are usually the bad girls or bad boys
Yeah, the girls at Catholic school and the
schools, sons
pastor's
or daughters?
daughters.
Yeah. Or they grow up having terrible sex lives and they can't even engage in a proper relationship. They don't know how to have a relationship.
No, because they haven't been given the tools to have a good relationship. I mean, there's so many things that are prohibited from young people to experience. As a Christian family survivor myself,
Mm-hmm.
and having been a part of that culture and raised in it, and having kids and actually being a part of that culture and trying to instill the kinds of belief systems that I was instilled with, it's really destructive. It's really psychologically damaging for so many.
It
Every
is.
family has, not every family, but a lot of families have that child that the family like kind of like brushes off to the side with their same sex attraction and stuff like that. That the little boy is more feminine, the girl is more, lesbian, masculine, machita, or whatever,
Right.
and they just choose to ignore it,
Mm-hmm.
right? They like brush it under the carpet
Yep.
as if it doesn't exist and expect it just to go away.
Right.
And I think that's what it is. Christians expect for things just to go away.
Yeah. And then they end up making those individuals that don't fit the moldy little box that the Christian,
They demonize them.
yeah, and then you end up having all sorts of shame issues, and then that's why I believe like of the many individuals that I interviewed, they all fit the same mold.
Yeah, of
It's like
course.
they're raised in it, and then they can't find happiness at all during the time that they're living their lives because they've been programmed to
Right.
believe that they're bad and they're evil.
I mean, many of the ex-gays that you interviewed,
Yeah.
you could just tell they're living this repressed, muzzled existence
Yeah.
where they can't fully express who they are
Mm-hmm.
in fear of being sent to hell over it. And it's like, it's
Yeah,
really
anything
sad.
from like watching adult films or self pleasuring. I mean, I know that every time I go into that Christian mentality, it's like I totally end up like not wanting to self pleasure because I think I'm going to get struck down by some lightning rod or something, or um,
I mean, what child literally has to be instilled with the fear that going to watch an old 1970s, mid 1970s movie or something, the great Muppet movie caper, which is puppets, right, from the Muppet Show,
right. or that you couldn't dance. I mean, I think a
Oh
lot of
yeah, no,
our
couldn't
lot of
dance.
failure
That
in the
was demonic.
beginning in our relationship was the fact that you were still working through a lot of guilt and a lot of
Well, there's a
problems.
lot of abuse in Christianity. I
Yeah.
mean, abusive, like, you know, shoving, like in my case, it was shoving everything that was Jimmy Swaggart down my throat, going to these, you know, crusades and force indoctrinated with this type of Pentecostalism and Christianity where, you know, it was so important to have the Holy Spirit in your life and to be led by the Spirit, which is like another form of possession, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
And then not even allowing you to have your own mind, to
no,
develop, your own thought process. Everything that you do and think is bad and is wrong. I mean, that is abuse.
it is. It
It's
really
massive
is.
abuse.
It's unthinkable now how abusive it is
Hmm.
because you know, we just finished. I've just introduced you to this guy who wrote a book called "I Kissed Dating Goodbye," right?
Hmm.
And it was a book that came out in the early 2000s that this young 21-year-old Baptist kid who actually came out as gay later in life.
Hmm.
He wrote this book about purity culture and being able to like preserve yourself for marriage and not to be sexual at all and not to engage in any of it, and he would like just pick and choose different little pieces of scripture and just repurpose it for the purposes of explaining to young people how they needed to not date and that they needed to stay away from, you know, masturbating and having any kind of relationships because God wants them to preserve themselves. And girls would get like this purity ring and they would all like, oh no, I don't date. I just wear a purity ring. Parents would shove that book in their face
Like,
and make them read it, write book reports on it.
how are you supposed to know what it is that you like or dislike if you don't get to, like, try different things?
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
And sex is always painted as like this evil necessity, right? And it's always structured around procreation. It's never about
Well, I know,
joy.
because that's what I was pushing when I was the church lady, because that's
Yeah.
what the Bible says, and that's.
Yeah.
I mean, you're reading this book, and you expect everybody in the world to follow this book because they say that is the book, and then all that does
Yeah.
is just like create neurosis and create unhappy people and people that don't have any release and people that just walk around life. Not being truthful to themselves or to others because they're repressing stuff. They're not being real. I mean, I know that, you know, our relationship suffered a lot.
Oh, it did.
Big
Because I
time.
grew up with that purity culture in mind. And, you know, anytime you wanted to watch pee or anything,
Right.
it was like,
I mean, when you were telling people that I forced you to watch adult films, it's like, gosh, I mean, that's like between a married couple, that is a very healthy thing to do because it gives you idea. It does. I mean, the majority of couples do watch adult films together, and it just like it spices up, the bedroom. It's what it is, but it's made to be such a awful thing.
well, sex is so animalistic and it's so pleasure driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
The eroticness of it is what it, you know, I mean,
Fantasies
saying
and yeah,
having sex like monkeys and stuff
right.
like that. I mean, it's like this uncontrollable urge that you have when you're with the person that
You
that
love,
you love, and
right,
that's such a beautiful expression of
right.
you giving yourself away
Mm-hmm.
entirely to someone,
Right.
right? To not just someone, but you're someone.
Someone, exactly.
You're a special someone. And for the church to paint that as evil, you know how many people it's destroyed over
Tons.
that? Just that one thing, that sex is evil
I know.
and that it should be preserved for the marriage bed and all that nonsense, which
No.
isn't true because animals don't marry.
No.
I mean, we are animals.
We are, and that's
We
what
have
people forget.
urges.
Yeah.
You know.
We have needs, we have urges. I mean, and to try to like cap it and not allow ourselves to do the things that we need is it's abusive.
And
it's
if
another
you,
word.
Yeah, and if you preserve yourself, say, purity for that one person.
What if you
What if
marry?
that one person is equipped with a genital that isn't really, well, let's just say it's not right for you, right? It's too big or it's too small,
Yeah.
or
Which in my case,
there's no pleasure. I know that whole story. Let's not get into that one about the person in England.
Right.
But it's like, it's too much.
Mm-hmm. So there you are. You're stuck. You're married. You're like, and you can't stand their smell. I mean, we all have a specific scent that you know that's your person.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people that have dated several people, and you've been like with somebody who you go kiss them, and their mouth is like, rock. You know, you can't deal with their hygiene or their smell. Is just not. We all have a scent, and it's like animals know that scent. They like they go and become attracted. If you don't get to adventure or experiment, then how do you know? I mean, you're stuck with somebody you can't stand how they taste, how they smell, nothing about them, and now you're married and you're stuck.
And in the meanwhile, youth pastors are taking advantage of young women and having sex with them like they did at my church. There was this big purity movement being led by the youth pastor who had just gotten back from Bible college, was this really charismatic guy. He went and spoke to all schools and stuff like that in the area, and they'd have like these chapels and little get-togethers at the public high schools. Come to find out, he had been boinking girls at church. All along, being the hypocrite that he was, caused all kinds of, hell to be raised. It's very hypocritical when the deacons at local churches are abusing the women at the church. When Sunday school teachers are having, indecent exposure with young children. It's just appalling.
And then let's look at another part of this whole thing. People that got married, they hate each other. They're still together. They have nothing in common. They don't have a sex life. They don't whatever, but they are afraid to get a divorce because the Bible tells them it's bad. Now you're stuck with somebody you don't love for the rest of your life. I mean, that's crazy when love is the most beautiful thing. Love should be the religion that we follow.
Love is what this prime creator is all about.
Exactly. And being able to understand your body, being able to be free enough to be and to be happy, because everything else is BS. Everything else is just torture, if you think about it.
But it's like this comment that was in that video that we just watched, from a person that was basically just abused by her parents. Like, oh, you need to read this book and you need to write a report on it. And she did everything that parents told her to do, and then she just landed in all kinds of abusive relationships and struggles, and then eventually she realized that she was lesbian.
Right. Because they don't teach you how to self-actualize. They force you to be something that you're not, and they force you to follow doctrine that makes absolutely no sense and is very destructive to the human race.
You're just given a book and expected to follow it. That's it. And then the simple statement is, well, we all have to take up our cross.
It's all cliche.
Follow. It's like everything's a cliche.
Everything's
where does
cliche.
Life really, where does the rubber meet the road?
Yeah, there's
because
nothing
in Christianity,
real.
It's always like cliches and innuendo and hyperbole and all these different, like, in a perfect world, when Jesus comes back.
They're just living life
when
waiting for Jesus to come back, and Jesus isn't coming back. And he says in the Bible, I will return quickly. You know, and it's like quickly, you know, and then it's like there's always a cliche, well, God's time is not our time. And, you know, it goes on and on and on. And it's like, listen, people, let's live in the real world. I mean, again, I'm not an atheist. I believe in a higher deity. But that higher deity couldn't care less who we go to bed with, who we are, how we live our life. Realizes this is a freaking war zone. I mean, we're just trying to survive.
If anyone wants to call any place hell, this is it for many people.
Yeah.
You know, this could be heaven for some people. This can be heaven for some people.
Mm-hmm.
This can be hell for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because we all have lessons to learn, and hell is really our place of testing. Where do purities get, you know,
how do you mold a sword? You know, you have to give it heat.
Where do impurities? How do impurities get phased out of a material and stuff? I mean,
boil water to be able to like kill the bacteria and whatever else. You have to face diversity. You have to be able to live life. You can't live in a little box or like a little bird in a protected cage. You have to experience the good, the bad, and the ugly in order to evolve.
And that is what's wrong with Christianity, is that it attempts to protect the young people in this encased bubble that is so unrealistic to the outside world. This bubble that is like this perfect little paradise that parents try to construct for their kids so that they can live in it while they're living with them. But then when they're having to face the outside world, they have no protection whatsoever. They have no coping skills, no ability to adapt to the environment, which is nothing like that little protective bubble.
No, on the contrary, they're harming that child because they're not equipping that child with the abilities to self-actualize, which is, you know, something
that's nothing that
a Christian would even understand.
Want you to utter, because like we said before, self-actualization is anti-God in every respect in their belief system.
But yeah, that's how a person becomes, you know, a well-balanced person, the self-actualization process. You know, you look at a pyramid, and down here is like the lower levels, and as you mature emotionally and spiritually and you get up in the top of that pyramid, that's how you self-actualize. And that's what we all should be striving for, to be better people.
And that's the irony. And people will say, I can't believe you guys would think that the serpent was the good guy. And it's like, well, the serpent was the one who told Adam and Eve to be self-actualized. He's the one that said, hey, your God is actually wanting to keep you from awakening to understanding the truth. And Christians are going to say, yeah, but he lied. They call him the deceiver, right? And the serpent was sly and deceptive, and, you know, just, you know, that whole characterization. But the serpent didn't lie.
No.
The serpent told the truth. He said that once you tasted of the fruit, whatever that was, then you were going to be able to distinguish what was right and what was wrong. And what was wrong with that in understanding your own ability to decide what is true and what is not true?
Right. And, you know,
God didn't want
obviously
you to do
that the group of Elohims, which we spoke about yesterday, which is part of the Yahweh group, and, you know, I believe there's many, you know, involved. They're the ones that don't want us to evolve because they're being bullies. They're trying to keep us down here in this lower level with fear, with creating all these like dogma and rules that is why we are where we are today. We should be a heck of a lot more advanced than we are spiritually.
And not just technologically advanced.
Spiritually,
but spiritually advanced, like self-actualized to the point where we actually are growing in our own ability as eternal spirits.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
and it just helps with so much. I mean, since you've like totally given up on all that Christian raise. And I think our path has really helped that. Like, you were the one that brought Christianity to me, but it needed to be that way so that I would go through what I went through, and then me going through what I went through, it woke your ass up.
Yeah, I mean, after a certain amount of time and experiences with Christians in general, like mostly family members and former friends, who, quite honestly, I don't know why they would call me a friend. I just, that for me, because they're not my friend, I'm not their friend.
Right.
So they're people that have beliefs that are so opposite of what I would ever hold to be true,
Right.
you know. And that journey that we've been on has been something that has been so eye-opening for me. You know, it's like almost like taking a bite of the tree,
Yeah.
of the fruit, and going, oh, okay, so this is right. So what was wrong is right, and what was right is wrong. And then your God says in Romans 1 or whatever, that Yahweh God says that, you know, he gave them over to their, to their, warped minds or whatever. You know, that whole concept of like reprobate minds and stuff like that. And it's like,
what a cliche
it's
at that too.
the reprobate mind is one that can't make the distinction between right and wrong, not the one that can. So everything that I had been taught is like opposite.
Well,
it's like,
that's how it works.
It's like, it's crazy.
But what better way to dupe people than to tell them, okay, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, and because you will go to this place of hell, literally. I mean, you're going to go to this abyss where you're going to burn forever and ever and ever. Well, spirits don't burn. Spirits are energy. Spirits are on fire. That's part of, like, it's just the essence.
Like the current going
through electricity. I mean,
electricity
we are
shock
fire. We are fire. So how can we burn? It's just this body, obviously, which we don't take with, because it's temporary. But
and
our
this
spirit,
body's not us.
I know
it's not us. This is just what's a covering, like a car we drive on this planet. A vehicle that gets us around in this physical, limited world. That's all this body is.
Yeah. But it's all based on fear, and it's all a cliche, and it's all well thought out to control humanity, because that's what religion does. And it just, if people don't open their eyes and they realize that they're being duped by this, that they're being stunted, they're not allowed to evolve. They're not allowed to, like, really grow. And I think it's important. I mean, our relationship right now is the best it's ever been, because of the growth. Because you no longer, I mean, I'm still in awe. I'm still like, is this real? I mean, because I know the person that I had for the first 6 years, and I mean, I know the person that I have now.
And I know how damaging religious abuse is. It's a very destructive force, probably one of the most destructive forces on the planet.
It is.
Is spiritual abuse by, well, my personal experience is with Christianity. I'm sure that there are other people in other faiths, like Muslim, Islam and all that, or
all of them,
whatever
religious
faith
system,
belief system that you happen to culturally be connected to by birth or by culture, by where you live.
Anything that tries to take away your will as a person, you're allowing you to experiment and navigate life, and forces you into a path, is abusive. You can call it whatever name, because there's many religions, many, and they all have the same concept, of just not allowing you to experiment, not allowing you to navigate and try to find out. I mean, how does a child develop? A child develops by crawling, moving, grabbing objects and banging it, bringing the objects to their mouth. While a child brings something to their mouth, that's why you're supposed to keep safe things so they don't hurt themselves. They need to do that so that nerve endings and dendrites develop in your brain. Well, that's the same thing with us and our behavior. How do we grow and evolve if we don't get into trouble, if we don't experiment, if we don't, find out? It's like when you're a little kid and you touch down there, as you're getting it's like part of growth. They want to make everything bad.
No, I remember just that concept is like, we talk about what does the army do when people are brought to boot camp? I mean, what do they do to their spirit, to their person, in order to invalidate them as human beings? How do they make them feel?
They tear them down.
Right. They psychologically destroy them so that they can reshape them in the form that they want them to be, right? They want them to be, trained in the Army's case, in the military, trained killers, trained assassins. Mm-hmm. So Christianity's no different. No. It's like their God puts you into this boot camp where you're supposed to be this, feel like, oh, if it wasn't for God, I'd be dirt right now. No, I'm so worthless.
More of him, less of me.
I'm a dirty rag. I don't have any value.
Your heart is
but
wicked.
God picked me up out of the miry clay, and He said, "Let me make you into what I want you to be." Yeah. And it's like all this brainwashing.
It's like
it's
why?
Psychological abuse. Christianity is
psychological
a cult and is psychologically abusive to people. Yeah. They don't realize it.
No, they don't. And then they'll come on here and say, "Why do you keep talking about?" Because people need to know. Because I was
affected personally.
I mean, people need to know about how abusive this really is and what they're getting themselves into. Instead of working through their issues, because we need to work through our traumas, and not just like stuff it into a Bible and say, well, read this and you're going to get healed. No, you're not. You're just suppressing. You need to figure out why you do what you do so that you could evolve and you could grow. Spirituality will allow you to raise yourself from a level. Spirituality along with psychology mixed together. Not your typical psychology, but, there's a form of growth that can be done through experiencing and understanding where the trauma came from.
Like when I was growing up, if you went to like a Six Flags park or something, they had that one roller coaster that was like everybody was scared to ride. But if you got on the ride and you survived it, you got like a sticker or a ribbon or something and said, "I survived the corkscrew," or whatever it was. That's how I feel about Christianity.
It's like,
I survived fundamentalist Christianity. I am still alive after the abuse, because it was an abusive situation.
I mean,
and people don't realize how destructive it is to position hell in front of a child and to say, if you don't accept this flannel graph Jesus that's on the little kitty Sunday school board, that you're gonna go burn in hell. Do you ever feel the fire of a stove? Do you want to burn like that for eternity?
So. And then to tell somebody who fell in love in the same sex attraction that they can't be in that attraction. A lot of the guests that I interviewed, and I felt really bad for them because they had to like literally break up with the person that they were so in love with, and now are alone and will be alone for the rest of their life because
they don't want to be in a relationship with the opposite.
Right, because that's not their makeup. Right. That's not how they function. And to tell people, and I always tell people the same thing, "Oh no, you're not born that way." Whether you're born that way or not, it doesn't matter. The thing is that that's what you desire and that's what you feel comfortable with. Why should you not allow yourself to feel? Why should you like deprive yourself of who you are and what you like. All for what? What's the purpose? So these people just walk around life like not being happy, pretending to be happy, trying to do something that's not natural to them, all because of why? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they're encouraged by their pastors to have children in order to preserve their
I
marriage,
know.
right? They're told, why don't you have sex with your spouse so that you can, so maybe you guys can rekindle the fire and share a life together. It's like, that's not why babies come to this
I
planet. It's
know.
not because, you know, to draw a couple to, oh, having a child saved our marriage. It's like the child has nothing to do with
No.
it.
No,
You
it's like then
know,
they
it's
feel like
like,
they own these kids, like a possession. And people have their own autonomous ways. I mean, you shouldn't have a child to make a marriage better or to think that that is your property. There's just so much that is wrong. Well, 30 minutes already. Uh,
wow.
yeah. Yeah, there's just so much that we could say about this, and we both have been very much affected by, Christianity. And my hopes and dreams for a lot of you who I've interviewed who are part of the Christian faith is to allow you to see beyond this book, beyond this life that you believe is the right life because you've hit rock bottom, because you're afraid to face your challenges, because you think that this is the only way out. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure you do. I mean, you lived in it for a heck of a lot longer than I did. That freedom is what's going to allow you to be happy. Healing whatever ails you, whatever trauma you might have had while you were growing up, is what's going to help you self actualize. Not going from one problem into another problem, one deprivation into another deprivation. I mean, that's.
One of the things that really struck me in a conversation that I had with my mom not too long ago was the fact that I said, Mom, imagine this scenario. What if things aren't exactly how you had imagined them to be? What if you learned a certain truth that changed your mind about God and how you interpret things that you were taught? What would you do with that information? What did she tell me? Well, it's too late for me to change.
Mm.
I can't adjust to anything new because I'm too old. And allowing myself to change would be destructive for me, right? Is basically what she said. And it's like, it's so sad that Christians are on this path where even if they were exposed to some truth, something happen in their life that would make them see things differently and interpret how they view God differently, which happened to me reading the book, Jehovah something, whatever that book was. Remember that book?
Yeah, I forgot the name
It's
of it.
called something about Jehovah. And it just outlined how God is both evil and good, the God of the Bible, and how he allows people to murder other people and all
Right.
this, so it's like all this stuff I'm exposed to, understanding. And if I were not to change and adapt and adjust my beliefs, what would that say of me? That I'm just this foolish person who, I mean, they say, oh, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And it's like, well, if you can't balance things between what you understand and what you've been taught and what you're discovering, then what are you? If you can't adapt to change, I mean, it's like, it's just wrong to be so
Yeah.
close-minded that
And to think that's only one way. I mean, like the whole concept of the only way to the Father is through the Son. I mean, and it's like, it's just, it has no structure. It has nothing concrete. It's all based on cliches, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Bottom line, it's more damaging than it is good. I mean, it just destroys and destroys.
I remember the biggest thing, like, my mom and dad wanted to do was to take me to Israel to get baptized in the Jordan River. That was like their big thing, right? That was their big thing. So later on in life, my parents never took me because it was obviously way too expensive to travel to Israel. But I had the opportunity to go and paid by my employer. I got there, went to the Jordan River, and it was this. I thought it was going to be this spiritual experience for me. It was a busload of people like getting dunked by these guys that were like being paid by, whatever it was, and they're just like this cattle herding line of people that just went in the water, dunked out. It was like so like commercialized.
Yeah,
And the same thing with the Garden Tomb. It's like, oh, this is where Jesus was buried and rose from the dead. And it's like, you go there, you have to pay some monastery association, and it's like hawking their wares, and it's so not real.
It's not.
It's just this concocted story and
I mean, if you read
storyline.
the Bible and you read, it's like little things that keep being repeated over and over again. Like I would remember when I would go to church and I had read the devotional, it's like the same thing that I was reading was being said in the church, and it's just like recycles itself, and it actually has no true meaning. Even like the red letters, which all very much metaphors, and it's just really not, and it has no structure, and it really, it's all based on this like fairy tale. When I come back, and it just.
I mean, I literally went to the top of Golgotha, what the Christians call Calvary. Up on top, it's a Muslim cemetery. I felt nothing at the sight of the crucifixion, quote unquote.
Right. And we've read stuff that the crucifixion never even took place. We have written books.
I read that Romans never used people a cross. They would impale people on the sides of the roads, and there would be thousands of dead, of people on these corpses, on these posts.
Yeah, and that's what
Jehovah. There was no crucifixion. There was no three crosses stood on Calvary's Hill. It was crucifixion day. This elaborate romanticized version. It's like it's naked bodies impaled by the thousands on the side
and
of
they, because like the Jehovah
on a stick.
Don't believe in the cross. They believe that Jesus was like
cross.
This way on the stick.
No, there was no cross.
And I mean, so I don't know. Who do you believe in, and what is it all for? What does it solve? What purpose does it have? What functionality? Because that's one of the main things with me: functionality. What functionality does it have? It has zero functionality. There's just no function in telling people that if they do without, that if they just forget about themselves and only live for this God, that they're going to be given this reward one day. Just like Muslims believe they're going to get rewarded with 7 virgins. Not just women, but virgins at that. It's all a play on words, and it's all like based on dangling a carrot stick on somebody's face to motivate them, to get them to do what they want. And we've already going on 40 minutes. I think we've babbled enough, but if you guys really enjoy our talks, hit that notification button, subscribe, support the channel, since we're no longer monetizing it, either through Patreon or through a one-time donation through PayPal, or reoccurring. You can do either or. We want to really get into this a lot more. Right now, this is the only time we're really doing videos because we get pretty busy during the day, and by the time we get back home, we're tired, we're making dinner, and we just like want to chill and not.
We're just gonna adjust our schedule a little bit better and see what we can do, getting home earlier so we can have more free time in the evening. But that would require us to leave earlier in the morning,
Yeah.
which we haven't done today.
yet. No, today
Yeah,
that's
so
already
today's not the day
Today,
for changing up the schedule. But
yeah. So maybe instead of doing the morning videos and doing stuff, we just get up, get ready, go to work, and then get home earlier, and we'd be able to,
But we also have tomorrow's a day off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we'll see.
make a video.
Right, make a video and maybe do a live stream or something. People could interact, but people like that. All right, guys. So if you have any questions, want us to cover anything in particular, we'll be more than happy to, engage civilly, because
I know there was a question about the word Elohim.
Yeah,
and
how it's pronounced.
Right.
And it's Elohim's.
Mm-hmm.
Because
and there,
it's plural because there's many, and I know Christians deny this, but it's a fleet of interdimensional, and Yahweh, Jehovah is, I guess,
one of
the
them.
top-notch one that tries to control.
Probably the loudest and the it's like the dog in the kennel that loves to jump up the highest and
exactly
make the most noise.
Exactly, but people don't even have a clue on what is real and what is not real. They're really being duped, and it's sad to see people being imprisoned, by the things of this world and the things of the outer world or the interdimensional world. There's just so much that you don't know. I was going to say we don't know, but we know a lot because we really have dealt really deep in a lot of this esoteric things. And
there's more that we want to learn and stuff, but we've been exposed to things that really alter how you are able to see life. Yeah.
So don't, the message here is don't put yourself in a box, and don't allow yourself to be indoctrinated. Keep an open mind, be flexible, because that's important for your health, your emotional, physical, and spiritual health. Because we both have been down the road. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, you were Pentecostal, and it affected our lives dramatically. And we want to be able to reach out to those of you that feel that you've been hurt by these belief systems.
Yeah.
And there is life after that.
There
You can
really
heal.
is. True freedom is found outside of those walls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, guys. So we'll catch you maybe tomorrow on a live stream. Don't know exactly what time because we don't do scheduling very well.
No.
So yeah. All right. So be well. We love you, but remember to always love yourselves too.